G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to Star Citizen with Mags, and once again we're starting off in Grim Hex. Yes, I've been naughty again, so I've got to go over to the security station to clear my name. So, while I'm doing that, I just wanted to take an opportunity to talk about some of the latest news that's just popped up in Star Citizen, and there's some very, very good news here. But first of all, why haven't there been too many videos of 2.6? My coverage in Star Citizen has definitely dropped back. Well, there's been a couple of reasons behind this. Firstly, I had some net issues at the start of the year and had to get those fixed. Thankfully, they're all fixed now and my net has actually been improved, which is excellent. But this did put me a little bit behind on the release of Star Citizen 2.6, and I was hoping that would be the core problem, but as it turns out, it's not. Star Citizen's always had an issue with lag. The servers are based in the United States, so there is a bit of latency that you need to deal with, and it's always been a bit of a thing, but it's mostly been something that you can work around without too much of a problem. However, with the change up to 2.6, something has changed. My latency within game has increased significantly. Now, I'm assuming this had something to do with the changeover to the Amazon servers that they are now using, as they have changed the engine to Lumberyard, which is Amazon's take on CryEngine. And being in alpha development, I'm honestly not too concerned about this. It's obviously netcode is something that will need to be addressed and is being addressed slowly over time. In fact, the changeover to Lumberyard was probably to do with the netcode more than anything else. That being said, it has turned 2.6 into a little bit of a non-event for me. I can play around in the PU, as you'll see here, but actual player versus player combat in the PU is virtually impossible. If you watch the video here closely, you can actually see why. The time it takes between me triggering an action and me actually getting a response for that action, it's nearly a second or over a second. As I understand it, the Amazon data center that Star Citizen is currently operating out of is based in Oregon, which means I'm looking at around a 240 millisecond ping before the rest of the netcode is actually taken into account. Now, with that kind of a ping, as you can imagine, Star Marine, which was the big draw card of patch 2.6, finally the first-person module is out, has been a bit of a non-event for me. I can't even do bug testing or any kind of reports on it because my ping is so high. Well, to give you an example, the first time I played Star Marine, I took a shot, and the shot from my perspective appeared to come straight through a wall and take me out. Perfect headshot. Now, we know there is some cheating issues, some old CryEngine cheats have been adapted, and Seagate is dealing with that and punishing the players who are using them rather harshly, as is justified. I am fully behind them punishing hackers hard. But because my ping is so high, I'm not entirely sure whether or not was that a cheat, was that an actual glitch, a gap in the terrain mesh that allows for shots to come through that needs to be reported, or was that simply an artifact of my latency that meant that from my perspective it appeared the shot came through the wall, but there was actually somebody there that the game simply hadn't informed me was actually there yet. Thankfully, Arena Commander multiplayer still seems to work mostly fine. The ping is a little high, but nothing that I can't compensate for. And obviously the single player modes worked absolutely perfectly as well, and are extremely fast. So I can still do ship reviews, but it's sort of limited what I can do within Star Citizen. Now today we received an email from, or those of us who are back, received an email from Cloud Imperium Games. Now, the first part of this email was specifically in regards to patch 2.6.1. This will be the next update patch that should hopefully be released within the next few weeks to a month with any luck. Now, this was a whole host of game optimizations and performance increases, some rebalancing, as 2.6 made a lot of changes to the game balance, and they need to tweak it a little bit, some bug fixes, so on and so forth. So, overall, a good quality of life patch and what you would expect as the first release after a major patch. However, the email also covered, and this was the bit that really caught my eye, the details for a second small patch, 2.6.2. Now, the first part of this patch will include the Mega Map feature, which is a new map that will allow players to connect between different multiplayer matches and also to play around with the single game modes, basically streamlining part of the UI functionality and making things just a little bit smoother, which is a nice change. The second part of this patch, however, is far more interesting. Now, back when Star Citizen was going through its earlier stretch goals, the $25 million stretch goal included an enhanced alpha, which would allow SIG to expand from just having a server hub located in the United States to localized servers around the world, mainly Europe and Australasia. Well, it looks like we are finally going to get it. Patch 2.62 will include multi-region game servers. This is likely going to include at least one server in Europe, if not several, as well as one or possibly several located in the Australasia region, and I'm actually hoping for the second. This is great news for everybody in Australia. We're going to get much lower pings. The Star Citizen Alpha and eventually the beta test down the track is going to run much smoother, and we're going to be getting these before patch 3.0, which is going to be possibly the biggest patch release in the history of Star Citizen. Well, actually, there's no real question on that. It will be, and it's probably going to be the most important patch release during the alpha phase of Star Citizen's development, as that is the patch that is going to start adding actual hard gameplay elements of the kind that we will likely be seeing when the PU is fully realized and released. Now, I said multiple servers. Why not just one, you greedy Australian bastard? Well, there is actually a reason for this. Most game companies, outside of some that are locally host mainly FPS shooters, generally made by larger corporations, but independent games developers will actually base servers, if they base them in Australasia at all, in Southern Asia, mainly Hong Kong and Singapore. This is generally the location that is chosen. The reason for this is the population of Australia is not incredibly high. A server in Hong Kong or Singapore can cover a much larger number of people, as you get most of Southern Asia within that server location at low latency, and it does still lower the ping for Australian players as well. So we still get a win, but it's not as much of one as you may think. For example, my ping to the Amazon data center in Singapore is 156 milliseconds. This doesn't sound too bad. It's a little on the high side for an FPS game, but it's something that is playable. However, the cable between Australia and Singapore regularly gets disrupted, so it's not uncommon for me to get pings to that same data center that can be in excess of 250 to 300 milliseconds, especially if the cable has been heavily damaged, which happens 2 to 4 times a year. Repair times on that cable can take upwards of a month, and during the time that it's damaged, well, we have to get routed to the United States and then come back through the United States' pipeline into Asia, in which case our ping to the Singapore local server for games that are based there, and I'm thinking, World of Tanks is a really good example, or World of Warships, their Australasian servers or their Australian servers, C server, are all based in Hong Kong or Singapore. Regularly, the pings can be just as high as our ping to Europe. Now, I'd never ask that the server not get placed in that end of the world. I'm sure there are many people in Southeast Asia that are massive fans of Star Citizen, have purchased into the game and would love to play low latency, and I would never want to deny anyone of that. However, at the same time, I would also like a server localized in Australia because of this issue with ping. And thankfully, Amazon does have a data center based in Sydney. From my location, and I'm not kidding, my ping to the Amazon data center in Sydney is exactly 42 milliseconds. Yes, it's like the game itself is speaking to me. And it gets better overall. Speaking to a few of my subscribers via Discord and getting them to run ping tests against the Amazon data server in Sydney itself, we've got players as far out as Perth and on the Western Australian coastline that have all got pings that are below 100 milliseconds across the board. While when you're talking in the 80 to 100 range, it does still sound rather high, especially for players that are from the US or from Europe that are much used to seeing much lower pings than this. This is still within the acceptable range that we've sort of gotten used to on this end. Lower would be better, of course, but below 100 milliseconds is quite playable. Now, for my European subscribers, you guys are not left out of the loop here either. As I said before, Europe and Australasia will be getting servers. The most likely location is the Amazon data server in Frankfurt for at least one primary Star Citizen server hub location. They may even put 2 in Europe due to the number of players that are over there, depending on the number of players that are available and what they think they actually need. Now, I should probably make sure I'm completely clear here. At the moment, a little bit of this is speculation, a little bit of it is reading past information. Frankfurt has been mentioned as a potential data center for a European expansion in the past, but of course that server location is not confirmed, and neither is whether or not we will be getting multiple servers in Australasia, just that we will be getting a server in Australasia at bare minimum. It's just my hope that they decide to place one in Southeast Asia for the Southeast Asia backers. That will cover most of Korea and that section as well, giving good low latency to the players in that end of the world, and then one in Australia for all the Australian backers, solving the problem of the line between Australia and Southeast Asia kind of being really crappy and really slow considering the distances that are covered. Now, as you can imagine, this is the single biggest piece of news that we've received in Star Citizen for quite some time. I'm all for the planetary landings and all of the stuff that has been promised and the demonstrations of it, but actually hearing that we are going to be getting server hubs soon enough that we may actually be able to partake in that when it is finally made available within the game is absolutely fantastic. I was actually finding it really hard to build up a lot of hype around patch 3. We know it's coming, we know it's going to land this year, and we know it's going to be in it, and it sounds absolutely amazing, but when you're looking at a connection speed of somewhere in the vicinity of 300 milliseconds, depending on time of day and network traffic, yeah, it's really hard to get the hype train going over something that may not be fully playable when it actually arrives. And there's the sneaky bastard who blew up my ship. Got him. So anyways, I am now fully pumped for patch 3.0 because I will have a localized server, or at least somewhat, by the time that actually comes out, which is definitely going to improve things. Now, as for coverage in 2.6.0, there are things that I can do. I've got a few ship reviews that I most certainly can continue doing at this point, looking them over, checking out their capabilities. I have a few lore videos that I was interested in going into as well, and I will also be covering some of the single-player orientated missions within the PU itself. Unfortunately, multiplayer PvP type stuff is probably not going to be big during the course of this patch, at least not until 2.6.2 actually goes live, mainly because of these latency issues. Hopefully 2.6.1 will do something to alleviate those. If it can bring it back to what it was prior to the Lumberyard launch, I think it'll be great. I could actually play then. It was not fantastic, but it was playable. It's also, to be perfectly clear, the only area where I've had any issues with Lumberyard. My latency to the game itself has increased. Everything else in the game is actually running better and looks better, looks a lot sharper in the graphics, so I'm happy with it overall. It's just a latency issue, and as I said, it's an alpha and I'm not playing on a localized server. What do you expect? Fingers crossed 2.6.1 will help. 2.6.2 is definitely going to fix things, and between now and then, I will just work around the latency as best as I possibly can. I'm looking forward to being able to bring some Star Marine to you guys. It looks like a fantastic game mode. I just haven't been able to play. I will be bringing up some more ship reviews coming up very soon. I have the Mustang Delta, which is the rare combat variant of the Mustang. I will then be doing the Caterpillar, and I also have a Drake Herald to show you guys. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the news, and until next time, ladies and gentlemen, please remember to click that like button if you do, subscribe if you want to see more, fly smart, fly safe, and I will catch you around the verse.